What's up, everyone? My name is Wes, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. Today's episode, I talked with Drew DeLakes, the mastermind of his titular band, DeLakes. Earlier this summer, the seven-piece group released their debut album, Unforgettable Cheer. We talked about the album's special inspiration, the process of recording over the course of the pandemic, the joys of making music, and a whole lot more. Without further ado, here's my interview with Drew from the band DeLakes on the Ear Coffee Podcast. How are you doing this fine Friday morning?
Doing well. I'm feeling rested for the first time in forever, so...
That's good. That's a rare feeling, yeah.
Honestly, good. One's waiting for that.
So I always find that musicians have a really strong connection with music. That's very unsurprising. And usually that's something that started at a younger age, and it's been a long, ongoing connection. So do you remember the first time you really felt that connection? You really felt like a deeper thing, deeper love of music beyond just being passively aware of it growing up? Because a lot of people, like, you hear the radio, you hear music in the store, but you don't really think about it. But then there's like one album or like one artist or something growing up that often really hooks you in and thinks, oh wow, this is something that I really care about.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing violin when I was like in second grade or something like that. Yeah, I really,
Wow.
I'll spoil it. I don't play violin anymore, but but that definitely, like, that was my first like introduction to music, and I wasn't like the most fond of it by any means. So, like,
Yeah.
getting rid of that and switching over to some other instruments. So it wasn't really like playing music that got me super invested in making the art and stuff like that. But doing I think what it probably was you know, the local band, the Honey Dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Lovey's band. Yeah, my parents have always tried to been like really involved in the local music scene, and back in like the early-ish 2000s, they were releasing, I think it was 10,000 Years. I think that was definitely the first album that I listened to, and I was just like, crap, like you can do that with music. You can story plot this out. And I think after like a couple years after that, same thing with like the Gorillaz album, Demon Days was another one where I was like, oh wow, this is like just taking it to the next level.
Yeah.
And I think what's always like sparked a lot of excitement for me in music.
Yeah. Since you started playing music from a very young age with like violin and other instruments, but was there a moment or even like an instrument that you started playing where you really realized that this is something I want to keep doing beyond just like if you were playing in like an educational, like playing at school or like playing in like a community orchestra or something, and like, no, this is something that I want to do of my own volition, want to perform and even write music and take those next steps?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had this like long-standing thing where I was just like, I don't need to practice. I'm a musician. Like, I'm already a musician because I decided I am one. And so I think for the longest time, I just sort of like floated by being like, yeah, I could like pretty much play cello. I could like pretty much play guitar. I guess I could like try learning how to play bass and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I went to college, because I actually got a degree in music therapy at first, and like since totally done other stuff. Yeah, it was a while. It was a little bit ago. I've not done much with that for like 4 or 5 years, but whatever. But I think for the longest time, I was just like, oh yeah, I can get by, so that works. It turned into more of like playing instruments for the sake of being able to create something, not so much like, oh, I want to become proficient at, like you're talking about like playing some jazz earlier, and it's like that's something that still baffles me a little bit. I'm doing my first like jazz show on bass in like a month or so, and I'm like, oh wow, God,
yeah. And there's like people that are even like more crazily dedicated than like the average jazz musician, like that they spend hours just doing their scales and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, it's like I'm spending an hour on the scale so I can perfect my tone. I'm like, I don't know, the note works, just do it. But yeah, I think it wasn't until I went to college and my guitar professor, Maya Radon van Laya, who's still a close friend of mine, was like, she was like, oh, you are not very good.
Tell him like it is. Wow.
Like the biggest character. I love her. But was like, oh man, yeah, I should probably get better. And then I just like started like trying to dedicate myself more to doing classical guitar, and so that definitely shaped a lot of the playing that I do.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. So outside of like you've mentioned just academic experiences and kind of shifting to more technical focus, but when did you first kind of start thinking about like forming a band or like writing and performing music? Because I think you mentioned, or there's a note about how you actually met the friend who sort of inspired Unforgettable Cheer when you were performing at a Bob Dylan festival. So I'm guessing there's some steps in between dedicating yourself to classical guitar and playing, I'm guessing, like some Bob Dylan covers or something, or participating in this festival and kind of undergoing this experience that catalyzed what we're now about to talk about with the album and everything.
Yeah. I mean, I've been in bands since early high school. In fact, our drummer and I grew up next to each other, and we were in the same band in like middle school and high school together. A couple different.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's like so good to be able to like keep those like friendships going and doing fun stuff for your whole life. So, we were in a band in high school, and I don't know, you know the first band you're in, you're like, God, I want to do this forever. This is the freaking I always wanted to do that. I mean, I think even though, went to school at like to do like classical guitar and music therapy and like technical this and stuff like that, but like I really focus almost all my energy on like mostly like indie music and like a lot of the like spiritual free jazz from the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
That's so good. Like, so I guess like being in a band was just something that I've always had as a part of my life. And so there's been like a couple years since like late middle school, early high school that I haven't been in a band. And it's like always been a focus of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, the band that you were thinking of, the one that we did a show up in Duluth for, when we were at the U of M, we had a band called the Riverside Coalition, which sounds like we were doing like miners, like
or like it's like workers' rights for like water pollution or something. It's like,
but it definitely wasn't. It was like folksy Americana indie like songwriter stuff. But like we definitely did some like fun sets and had like like string section and like cool stuff like that. And
cool, yeah.
U of M Battle of the Band stuff, but yeah, we got to do a show up in Duluth, which was a really fun one.
Yeah. So with that show, I guess, since you mentioned that's where you first encountered the friend who was visiting from Sweden, or a soon-to-be friend, not at the time.
Nebulous.
So, just talk about like meeting them, and since there was a gap of time between when you saw each other, like how did you keep in contact before you were able to go visit them in Sweden eventually?
Yeah, I think like with that, it was just like sometimes you just like meet people and you just click right away. That was just essentially what happened. It was just like you sometimes it's just like, oh man, I feel like I've known you forever. That feeling, and so it was just really nice to have that instant connection and develop that like really really strong close friendship. And so it was just like it was easy to stay in touch and just like chat every so often because no matter where anyone is, you can kind of you're always connected through the digital world, but
one of the few positives.
Like I think as with like most people, this is like this is a really unique trait of ours is people like to travel. So people travel, and so like he came back over to the US and like stayed for a little while, and I went over to Sweden a couple times and things like that. So it was just a lot of developing that. I mean, it's not much of a thing anymore, unfortunately.
It's on a brief hiatus.
Maybe a permanent one,
perhaps. So with just like that ongoing, like you two visiting each other, how did that bond like grow into the period where you wrote the album? Because I think you said it was created over the span of about 4 months and written in about 3. Before we get into like the nitty gritty of putting it all together, what was the inspiration? Like what was going through your mind when you were getting back and you're thinking, did you know you were going to make an album? Were you just feeling overall, like you mentioned, like a feeling of bliss and just feeling really creatively energized, and that naturally ended up becoming an album? Or where was your head at when you were getting into that?
Well, I've been told that I'm someone who feels things very intensely. So I think I had just come back from Sweden the first time, and it was, I think, probably the first time I ever felt like truly in love, and like felt this, a deep connection. And it was the first time I felt like legitimized by it, rather than like,
Hmm.
in high school, and to be like, oh my gosh, I have a crush.
Yeah. Is the next
Yeah,
step. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I definitely felt like the next step. And I think I when I was writing it, I kind of wanted to, I don't know what other word to use, and I kind of hate saying this, but like capitalize on the moment of just being like,
Hmm.
oh wow, this is like a different feeling that I'm used to feeling,
Yeah.
which is usually not, always like super positive, joyful, whoa, yeah, that
Yeah.
type of. And I think, so much music, rightfully so, nowadays is just like depression pop, and like
Yeah.
there's not too many great things happening at the moment. So
Hmm.
like I get where that stems from, and I kind of wanted to just be like, you know what, like we need a little of both. We need to have some like moments of intense joy. And I think on the plane ride back, I listened to the of Montreal album Satanic Panic in the Attic, which has been
Hmm.
one of my all-time favorites, and is obviously like super, like what the album's inspired by a
Yeah.
lot. But it definitely has those vibes. But yeah, I listened to it on the way back, and it's just like, oh man, that like hit me right where I
Just
was like at emotionally
yeah,
at the.
the music you needed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I hadn't really listened for a while, and so just like came back full force. And from there I was like, all right, like on the plane ride back, I was like, I want to write this out. And so I pretty much just spent the next couple of weeks just like jotting a lot of lyrics down. And I spent a lot of time just like, I'm not a morning person, but I'd like find myself trying to wake up early,
Hmm.
and like see what I could come up with at different times of the day. Like, what would it sound like if I was writing something at like 4 a.m., or what was it like if I was writing something at like 8 a.m., or in
Hmm.
the afternoon, evening, and stuff like that. And it definitely like kind of gave a little bit of a mix in the sound, sort of. I feel like it was still coming from the same place, so it still kind of became a little bit homogenous. But yeah.
I mean, well, it makes you say homogenous, but also listening to the album now, there was at least I'm assuming it's very deliberate how all the tracks for the most part flow into each other.
Oh yeah,
Was
yeah.
that kind of something where you were realizing, like, just because of how thematically and musically consistent everything is, let's just like change a few things so they flow into each other more naturally? Or was that already something you kind of did that idea come to you earlier on or later on in the process? I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I think like it was definitely a mixture of both, because I mean, you know how it goes when you're writing something, like, all right, let's write something, then like instantly you just like play a G major chord, and you're like, oh, okay, this song's a
This
G
is
major.
great. No one's done
Yeah,
this before.
yeah. It's like, oh, I feel like I've heard that one before. Yeah, so like there are a few songs where it's like, oh, that would like easily flow into this. But there are definitely a few tracks where it's like, oh, I should write an intro or an outro that transitions into this thing a little bit better. Or like, what chord, what cadence can I use to get into this next part? I think that because I'd written a couple solo albums throughout high school and college. I think I did like 4 solo albums that were very similar in the sense as like transition all the way through, just because I think I listened to, what was I what was I think it was the Hazards of Love,
The
that December
Decemberists?
album. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
was like, wow, everything transitions. It's like an opera,
Yeah.
People, yeah, that's been a thing for like several decades, but sure. So yeah. So I definitely was like, oh, I don't know. I think the moment in between tracks when you're transitioning, like that, like micro millisecond of just like ending of one song, start of the next song, is like a really powerful, cool thing. And so I use it a
Yeah.
lot, I guess.
Especially if you don't know it's coming. Like
Yeah.
I had not listened to like any like the singles. I was like, I'm going into the album
Yeah.
and listening to it all at once. And so that when it just kept happening, it was like the
Yeah.
transition, like, oh, this song flows in this song too. Okay. And then you realize, oh, I think this was a deliberate thing for all the songs. But the
Yeah.
first few times you're kind of caught unaware, and it's a very pleasant surprise because that's always I at least like when bands try to do that, when artists try to do that. Um,
Yeah.
so that was, I for sure want to talk about that because I think that was a really cool choice for the album. Uh,
I love that
yeah.
stuff.
When you,
Transition.
yeah, when you were writing everything, you mentioned just like jotting down a lot of lyrics and just were you focusing on the lyrics first before really starting to put together like the framework of the music that would end up becoming this very full band album, or was it a mixture of both? Kind of what was your process like when you were
Yeah.
really putting down the framework for these songs, pre-transition, pre-recording, and everything?
Right. I mean, I think as an instrumentalist, I think a lot of times instrumentalists tend not to focus as strongly on lyrics, which
Yeah.
that's that's just like stereotyping it, so I shouldn't like say that too much. I think this was
There's
the
a grain of truth there. Yeah.
there's like a grain of truth there, yeah, exactly. But like I definitely was like, I should probably make this, I should actually try to like think about how to like write lyrics and have words flow and do themes and have like, cryptic messages and stuff like that throughout it. And it was kind of the first time that I had ever really focused on lyrics more intently. A lot of other times it's been kind of just like free thought of
Hmm.
like, whatever like comes to mind and like throwing a big word here and there or something like that, like
Yeah.
it's kind of fun to do also, just like,
Yeah.
the band The Fiery Furnaces?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like Eleanor Friedberger just like spitting out that fire just of like,
You have no idea what she's saying, but like all the words are like thesaurus words, and you're like,
yeah,
this is
exactly.
great. This is really good, I think.
Yeah, you're like, I think she's saying this, which doesn't make much sense. And then you read it, you're like, okay, I guess in like a legal way that makes sense. Like,
Very
she's still
technically, but
yeah,
yeah.
it technically works. Yeah, so like I kind of tried straying away from that and just being a little bit more deliberate with the message. And so yeah, there were definitely times where I started with lyrics, but I think like a good example is the title track Unforgettable Cheer which is like, compositionally is a semi like straightforward song. I mean, it's
Hmm.
just like G major, C major, G major, and repeat it like 28 times or something like that. But that the lyrics for that one just like happened in one night. I was just like, oh, that's a melody. I'm just gonna like sing some words over it and just like did a voice memo on my phone and kept pretty much everything, changed a few things, but
Hmm.
I think it's like I think we all have the ability to tap into that kind of like universal consciousness and like there are times where it's like, oh wow, like there's definitely something flowing through me right now and I
Hmm.
really want to capture it. And I think those moments can be fleeting, especially considering, like we all have to go do jobs and we all have to like
Yeah.
have this
We have
obligation.
responsibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just sucks going through that and thinking like, oh, I probably had a moment right there that I could have come up with something that I was really happy with, but like I was
At work. Yeah.
it's like teaching a kid about what a C major chord is, which it's a different joy in of itself.
Yes.
But yeah, so
Um,
to answer your question more clearly though, yeah, it was a mixture of both.
mixture of both.
Definitely like,
Yeah.
oh, here's like a melody and some chords that work really well. Let's just like throw some lyrics in. Or I'd
Hmm.
like write some lyrics and be like, that might be work really well if I did like this chord pattern with it.
Yeah.
So,
That I think that's makes sense. I
yeah.
feel like it isn't often where someone is, or where a group is very much in either corner, where they're like, where
Yeah.
it's explicitly always lyrics first, or I never write the. I mean, I guess it's more common for like bands to be like, yeah, I came up with the lyrics when we were in the recording studio, or like right
Yeah.
before we needed to like track vocals, and that
Right.
stresses me out. But it's like, hey, it turned out all right for you, so
Yeah, exactly. It's like if it turned out all right, that was fine.
like I can't
But
be
yeah, it
mad.
does kind of freak me out that like, but there's like something about like the spontaneity of it that you could like get something that's maybe a little bit more free, less forced in
Yeah,
a
a
way.
little more
I think
honest,
it's the biggest
maybe.
stuff.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's probably the more positive way to think about that process. You're like, oh, it's just more genuine. It's in the moment.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It's slightly more. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
um, since you mentioned that you written at least like a handful of albums just pretty much for yourself as you were going through high school and college, had you ever written like that proficiently before, where you were putting together a lot of song ideas over such a short period of time, or were those more gradual since there wasn't that kind of creative energy you're trying to catalyze upon and just take advantage of? Or have you always been a pretty quick writer, at least when you're first putting songs together?
I think once I'm in the like process of writing stuff, it happens really quick. Like the albums I did solo was kind of like a solid like I guess like 6 years of just like album, or even like I think a little more than that because I like the first year we did like an album with our high school band. We wrote a full second album and had most of it recorded, but the album crash or the computer crashed, and then we all went to college. So it's just like
no.
it's like lost in the Tablet files. Did you ever use that software Tablet?
I don't think so.
Okay, it was like this. It was this software that like it like pretty much was like only a Windows type thing, where it's like you just like you could just tab out everything. So it's like great. We like wrote all these parts for the band. Here's the keyboard part. It would be like 17th fret on the E string. It's like, what is the 17th fret on the E string? We don't know. You know?
Yeah.
So it was really, or like the drums were all tabbed out. You could like
okay.
do some stuff with that. It was like super funny stuff like that. But yeah, so that's where that album exists. If any of us have it, we could listen to it through MIDI, but whatever.
Yeah, just the MIDI versions.
Yeah. No, I guess a year after that, I did my first solo album, and then did kind of like solo like the next year. And did like full instrumentation and stuff for it because I just think it's super fun to add a ton of elements and be sort of maximalist with it all. But then it was the Riverside Coalition after that. So we did like a half album mini EP thing. And then there was a band I was in briefly called Ensign that was some of the same members of Riverside Coalition. We did another EP for that one that we recorded at a studio. And then I'm trying to think. I guess it's like I'm not writing like all year long, but there's definitely just like, okay, these 3 months I'm writing. Because then after that, I did like, because I did you know the theater Heart of the Beast.
I don't actually.
Yeah. Okay. They're flipping amazing. They just do like a lot of large scale. Well, they just do a lot of puppetry work, and so it's just like
okay.
They're the ones who put on the Mayday parade each year.
Okay.
Like, yeah, they didn't do it last year or the year before. Yeah, but yeah, so they did this show called Action Sequence, which Steve Ackerman and Liz Ventnagel were Ventnagel. I don't think you guys go by her German pronunciation, but
yeah,
I don't know what they do. But they did this like whole show that was like an 80s action sequence montage, and so it's just like going through the theater is essentially just like an hour-long car chase that was just like cannons blowing up, tanks coming through, helicopters, like light rail things crashing. They asked me to do like a full score for it, so I did that.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a super fun one. We got to get to put a whole like orchestra together for it, and yeah, it was a wild one. That was fun. And then I think right after that, a couple of us did this like performance art thing that we toured around the Midwest, which was really fun. About this woman, Alice Gray, who is this like astrophysicist who she lived in Chicago, and she was this like brilliant mind, but of course it was like the early 20th century, so like, oh, women don't know
can't
anything.
Think. Yeah,
women can't think, and if they do, that's witchcraft, that type of stuff. So she like dropped off the face of the earth and just moved out to the dunes on Lake Michigan.
Oh,
she just like studied the fauna and everything like that, where they're just people started seeing this like woman wandering the forest, and they're like, that's an Amazonian woman, and so they just like started like mythologizing her, and she was like
without her even knowing.
Well, like she didn't know at first, but then people started like trying to like hunt her down and be like, that's her, that's the Amazonian woman, and she's like
Bigfoot. My goodness.
She's Bigfoot, exactly.
Oh,
and it's like,
wow.
She's like, I will literally try to escape this. And then like the newspapers started publishing all this stuff, calling her like Diana of the Dunes, like the goddess of the hunt type thing. So yeah, we did like a whole show about that, which was really fun. But I think like immediately following that, I went to Sweden and then wrote all these songs. So it's kind of been nonstop. Yeah.
Yeah. When actually was that trip? And I guess prior, like with the Diana or the Alice Gray production, when was that? Pre-pandemic, I'm guessing. Like maybe like
yeah, it was pre-pandemic. Actually, no, it was April 2020. I said forget it. I'm going over it. No.
Yeah.
That
There
Rona.
were people that did that, and
I know. I couldn't believe it. I was like, no way. I cannot.
unless you're
believe it.
staying there, you're like quarantining in Sweden, like.
Yeah, exactly. Which it's like just because you're there doesn't mean they're gonna like give you the same like healthcare benefits.
No.
You're not. It doesn't mean you're a citizen.
You
like,
can't just do that like on a whim. There's a process here.
Yeah, exactly. God, it's crazy. Yeah, no, they the we called that show Drift Woman, but it was the Alice Gray show. We did that, I think it was summer 2018.
Okay.
And then I went to Sweden the first time winter, it was like over Christmas and New Year's of 2018, 2019. And then yeah, so then I wrote the songs and got the band together. And I think we started rehearsing around mid-March or so.
Of 2019.
Right, and had all the parts, and of course, like I'm so lucky because like they're all super close friends. I guess I had like met the bass player for the first time at rehearsals, named Graydon Peterson, who's another really great jazz player in town. But Ben, our drummer, who I've known forever, is a jazz musician. Graydon, who the bass player, is a jazz musician. Patrick, is the jazz musician.
Yeah.
And then Elizabeth and I both went to music school at the U of M, so it's like really nice just be able to be like, this is what I got, let's try putting it together, and like they're like, okay, and just like play
it happened.
I wish I could do that stuff, but like it's good to be around people who can.
Yeah. So did you like have to go to each of them individually, or had like you even talked about forming a band with any of them prior, outside of Ben the drummer, who you obviously played with before? And you were just kind of like rounding up the people you thought were right for the job when you were kind of finishing up the initial draft, like the initial writing process and everything.
Right. I mean, I think when I was putting it together, I was like, ooh, yeah, I definitely want to like have this be a band and like perform this stuff and do some of the really fun like performance art things that we do with the shows and stuff like that. So I was thinking like, who would be down to do this and like willing to like I won't. There are definitely a few parts that are like pretty difficult. So I was like, I should probably ask someone who wouldn't be bothered by that. But like, I would like Ben's one of my like, but he's like my best friend. So I of course was like, I'm writing all these songs. You should play drums for them. He's like, oh, okay. Yeah, we should get to play bass. Like the bass parts, if it's you can hear them like pretty well on there, but like there's some like doubled layers that like are really like. There's some like complicated bass things. So I was like, who like we torture,
Yeah.
We torture. And he was like, oh yeah, you should ask Graydon because he's an amazing bass player. And so it's like, yeah, I feel like if he's gonna do something that isn't jazz, it should be like something that challenges him a little bit. And yeah, and then Patrick is a good friend of Ben and mine, and so that, and Elizabeth and I have known each other for like a solid like 7 or 8, 10 years. So it just came together really well. Yeah.
Who are the fun makers?
Oh yeah,
I did see that, and I was like, that is an interesting role. Does that mean like you just hand them a maraca and they're just kind of there for moral support and like to create like a fun environment, or like what is their actual like quote unquote role in the band? Not to like box them in or anything.
So no, it's like what I think that I've always wanted to like add performative elements to shows, because I think a lot of the music I was listening to is very like performative when it was live. Like there was a lot of stuff going on, whether it was like like that Decemberist album had a lot of like visual things to it, or like a Montreal show
in general like, of Kevin Barnes is just
yeah, it's so crazy. Yeah, exactly. So I think I was just like, yeah, I mean, like this music definitely calls for it to be like more of a party and a celebration. So I kind of want to have 2 other people just sort of like doing things that are crowd engagement.
Okay.
Because you just like, you go to some shows where you're just kind of sitting there and you're like, yay.
Yeah.
But what if like people were like handing out sparklers, or like Cuckoo Kangaroo? They like my friend and I like went to see the Aquabats back in high school, and Cuckoo Kangaroo opened for them. And we were just like, what the hell? This is awesome. They're just like coming like a parachute, and they're just like, like throwing their sweat at you and stuff like that. And you're like, oh yeah, I love this. This is great. It's disgusting. But yeah, I pretty much we did a backyard show a couple summers ago. It was 2019, back in July, and I pretty much just like hey, Kim and Joni. Kim also has a side project by the name Kim, and I play bass in
Okay.
for her. And then Joni is also a super, super awesome artist and musician, and does a lot of theater and performance. And it's just like they're both just amazing souls. And so it's pretty much just like y'all get to have playtime, just like go to my garage here and just grab whatever you want and turn it into a prop. So they're like, they like add like a few random things, like here's like a jump rope, here's a globe, here's like 50 glow sticks, like just
toss them out to people. Yeah,
and like it was a blast. And so I was like, oh, we definitely have to do this. So since that first time they played with us, we definitely amped it up a lot. We did a Halloween show after that where we did things like we had a paper mache cat that had like it was like a piñata, so we had like candy in it. We did we did a Halloween show with the artist Sim One, and we like, I think I can't remember the guy's name, but like the manager of Kitty Cat Club was definitely like, you shouldn't do that because you're gonna get like all these people are gonna just drop candy wrappers on my floor, and it's like, stay after, I'll clean it up,
like, hey, we'll take care of it, because you recognize that you're accepting the fact that there's going to be candy wrappers all over the floor.
Exactly.
Like, we're not coming in and going to make you do this. That would be not great. But
I don't know why we stuck on the cat theme, but because they were dressed up as cats for the show. But I think that's of course. But we also did Cat's Cradle, where we did like a giant audience wide like Cat's Cradle. We like tied people up.
Oh my gosh.
And we had like people drinking potions and like hot dogs. So we put some like string and a washer in this like squeeze bottles, so like you could squeeze it out and then it would like come back in. So they were like pretending to dump like ketchup and mustard on them. It was just like, so just doing a lot of like stuff like that. Yeah. But what we're trying to do for this show that we have on August 20th, on this Friday coming up here, is just kind of go all out to like the full maximum all outness that we can do. And so I've got someone else playing guitar for me, so I can kind of interact with Kim and Joni more. Mm-hmm. We're going to be doing a lot of like, there's going to be some like aerial things going on. We're going to have like a beheading sort of thing, and like
what would any show be without a beheading?
Yeah, I know. You go down to the local coffee shop. You got your singer songwriters, and I'm just waiting for the beheading. I haven't. So I don't know. But yeah, we're doing like a lot of. Also, there's like a running joke that we look like a cult because of a recent photo shoot we did, and so we're playing up the cult vibe bit for this one, but still like making it very like fun and lighthearted.
Not cultish,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
So you mentioned the Halloween show, and we'll get a little bit into like recording and everything. But since the band had been, sounds like, rehearsing and working together for at least a little while before this show, you released a couple of the songs as like a Halloween EP before, like almost a year before the album had come out. Was that, what was that kind of decision like? Were you already planning to do that when you were setting up the show, or is it just because if it was at Kitty Cat Club, I know they usually have like a good engineer there, a good soundboard operator guy. Like what was, I guess what was the thought process for that? Because it's very interesting to put out live Halloween remixes of songs before anybody hears the actual recorded versions of them. Can't say many other bands have done that.
Yeah, that was a COVID blunder for sure. That was supposed to be that was definitely supposed to be the opposite. But we were planning on recording in a studio right before like the actual full album. Mm-hmm. We were gonna record probably that fall, like right around the time of the Halloween concert. Mm-hmm. But then of course like organizing stuff and getting time, and then all of a sudden COVID happened, and just like people visiting and stuff like that, just like it wasn't a thing that we could do. So we're like, all right, let's push this off a little bit. But Ben and I have been recording stuff on our own and together since like 2008 or 9, and so we've been just like collecting a lot of gear and like the skills and stuff for that. And so we decided, it was like, well, you know what, it would save us a lot of money, which like because of the pandemic we don't really have right now. And it's a good way to like, use the time since we're all at home. And so I just recorded most of it in my room. And then when it was like safe to do so, I had people come through and record in my room. We had to like be masked up, and it was over the summer when other things were like dipping a little bit, but still kind of but
we've gone in waves, yeah.
we got in ways, yeah. But the Halloween one, the nice thing about that was we entered a demo into a competition and won free recording time at Wild Sound Studio.
Cool.
Yeah, which like that place is so amazing. Matt Holmes was recording, and I've worked with him a couple other times, and he's so phenomenal and fun to work with. The Halloween one, yeah, we recorded that one at Wild Sound for free in one night, and so it's just a lot of like, all right, everyone, we got to crank out 4 songs in the span of like 2 hours.
Let's
so
go.
like freaking rip it, yeah. And so it was really fun, but we did it last September, which was like, I think it was probably like one of the last things we could like do indoors for a while before things just kind of exploded. And so, yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. People were, like, it wasn't like over the summer when recording for a lot of bands was able to kind of start up again.
Yeah.
After like the first kind of, everyone was getting a little bit used to the accommodations and the precautions we would need to take.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing even more so in like September once the summer had passed. So with the home recording and everything, I'm guessing the songs have grown a lot from when you originally written them once the other musicians started playing on them, even like, or did you, I guess, let me rephrase this. Did you find that they added a lot and they kind of put their own spin on things and added a lot of their own character and flair to the parts that they were either performing, recording, playing, or did they stay pretty faithful to at least the roots of what you, like the bones of what you had first written just on your own, thinking like, I need to find someone who can play this? Or did they, I guess, what was that like as the songs evolved once the full band got involved, even pre-recording?
I think they added so much because like, I'm not a drummer. So I was like, yeah, Ben, this is like the feel that I want to like add some stuff. And he had some really awesome fills and percussion elements and things like that really spiced it up. Patrick has gotten really into synthesizers since starting this band, which is like awesome. I'm like so for him to do all that stuff. He's so good with all those like this like technology stuff, that just figuring out all the different like functions of every knob. He was able to add some like, really awesome squeals and like fun like effects like that in there. Unfortunately, I didn't have great in recording the bass parts because it was like early on in the pandemic, and so like just to like get everything on track, I'll just do the bass parts myself. But then like Elizabeth also, like she's such a creative vocalist. She, especially in the Schopenhauer Katel Drago song, the third one, is God knows how to say that. But
I can't say it back to you, but I do remember that song title.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, she added a lot of like really fun vocal effects, and like we worked out like a lot of harmonies together, and just like she added so many like really fun things on there, and on Unforgettable Cheer as well, just like adding a lot of great parts. And so it was fun to be like, hey everyone, here are your parts, but like definitely spruce them up as you see fit. And like another instance, I wrote a lot of places for Patrick to do some soloing and stuff, and he like really took it to the next level with a lot of those. So it was awesome.
That makes a lot of sense. Given the jazz background of like, you're letting me solo? Really? Me?
Yeah, oh, no way.
I've never done this before. So with the recording process being a little bit more piecemeal and coming and going, how did you find that you were still, I guess, maintaining the energy that you wanted to put into the album, that you wanted people to take away from the final release once they were listening to it, given that it's so much harder to kind of capture that same like communal feeling when you're all separated, even just like by the difference in like a room. But if it's like one at a time, that's very different from everybody being in the studio together, even if everyone's not recording at the same time. But how did you almost like accommodate for the limitations that were placed on you by time and availability to space and like the pandemic and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think a majority of the recording that I've done has always just been like track by track by track. And so it's really been like, if not just like on my own, like in like when I was like living with my parents or something back then, like in the storage room, just recording stuff on my own, or if it was just like Ben and I recording a track here and there for like
Yeah.
something. It was definitely just like this is kind of like all it is. There were only a couple instances where I was like recording with a full group, which by the way, and so it was like, oh yeah, I can just like take my own pace with this. I'll get the right track, and oh oops, it was like the 38th track that worked perfect. Then you're in like a studio and you have to do it in like one or two. It's like
Oh.
shit, yeah. but but for this, I think even though it was still just that one-on-one recording experience, whether it was like with the band or else we had our friend Mitch Van Laar do some horns on it, and our friend Levi Schwartzberg. It's also another jazz person you maybe have come across, but he did vibraphones throughout the album.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, so they both added a lot of stuff, but even then it was just that one-on-one thing. But I think because of the pandemic, because we hadn't been able to see each other, it like almost in a way became a communal thing. So it's this like, wow, I actually get to like be around someone for a little bit, and like granted it's not going to be nearly as close to the same as it used to be, and it's not a group setting at all, but like it's used to like do something with someone, and I think it came really well. I think more of the excitement though definitely came from the woman who mixed and mastered the album. She lives out in Tacoma, Washington. My friend Rochelle Lene, who is an awesome performer who used to be in town but moved out there a couple years ago. She had worked on an EP or an album it was an album that Rochelle had done. And Rochelle's like, you got to send your music over to her. She's awesome. And yeah, she's phenomenal. She is so flipping good at working with what we had. I mean, we've like since upgraded a lot of the recording technology and like hardware that we have, but she worked with some like rough recordings and made them sound really spectacular. Yeah. And she's awesome. And also just like an amazing like music discoverer. She and I both went through going through kind of the same phase of like listening to a lot of like rare tracks from the 80s where they used to just be like, oh, you're a pretty face who writes music. Here's, $2,000 for a studio recording. We got a song who's just sing. So you get these like whack ass recordings where like people are like, singing like, stuff like that.
Really weird stuff. Yeah.
It's like, but it like is so catchy because someone like spent tons of money to produce like this awesome track. But yeah, there's like a YouTube channel called Planet Named Desire that just has like super awesome rare 80s recordings, really fun stuff. Yeah. So
yeah, I'll definitely need to check that out. That sounds really interesting. Just, if only to get like a more specific idea of what you're talking about, because that sounds like a very cool, interesting, very minor part of history.
Yeah, exactly. It's so oddly niche, and it's like a lot of like like femme-fronted artists and stuff like that, which is cool. But did you listen? I don't know if you listened to the cover that we did, the Hawaiian Dreams one.
I saw that. I did not get a chance to listen to it.
No, it's like because it's just like a random offshoot thing that we did, but that was actually a song that I found on that playlist. And cover of
fun little way to come full circle. Cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, with recording everything, did you already like what was the process like working and talking with everybody and finding a time to release it, even because it was a little bit before or maybe kind of just as maybe people were starting to think of live music again, and given how important it sounds like and the live element of the full 7 or 8 piece coming together to perform and engage with the audience, did that influence the decision to like, okay, everything's recorded and mixed, we can put it out in June? Or where was that decision coming from when you were, I guess, planning everything, scheduling everything?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to wait until it was warmer for both because of COVID, but then also it's such a summery album that like I suppose you could release it in the winter and be like, yeah, I bet you want that.
We're a bunch of sunshine in the cloudy skies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look out your window. It's beautiful, isn't it? Just kidding. It's a but yeah, no, I think like we had it finished in like I think about like late January or so, and
you emailed me your coffee in January 28th, which
okay. That
It's
was
been a
probably
long
like
time coming. Yeah.
we'd had it for a while, but I think like for this one, I definitely wanted to spend some time. Like I don't know, with everything else I've released, it's always been just like, hey, I did this thing, and it's like, okay, yeah, but that was, how
You
it
just
goes.
kind of
You're
put
like,
it out for the sake of putting it out. Yeah.
yeah, and so which I'm like fine with. Like it's like put more
Hmm.
music out. That's fine. I don't really believe in like the oversaturation of creating music. That's just
Hmm.
that seems like a lot of gatekeeping if you ask me. But
Okay. Yeah.
which there is a lot of music being
Yeah.
put out. But let people create stuff. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I definitely wanted to like put as much effort into like putting the album out there um like writing it
Writing
and
and
working
recording.
to
Yeah.
record it and mix it and everything like that. And so yeah, that's definitely why you got that email back in January. But for the release, we just kind of like found a good day to have it as like a really, I can't remember, it was like June 10th or 11th or something
Yeah.
like
I think
that.
11th.
11th, yeah. And then we did a backyard show for that,
Okay.
which was fun just because like backyard shows are awesome. You don't have
A
to
little bit more
like
low key. Yeah.
make it more low key as well. Yeah. And like just being outside. And also there's so many venues that they're having a lot of artists perform, and you'd hate to like schedule something and then have a COVID mishap. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And just risk. Yeah.
yeah. So we had a lot of people show up for that, which was really awesome. But it was kind of more of like a friends and family type thing.
Hmm.
But, that was just kind of like doing a random set. It wasn't like the full album, which is what we are doing actually on the 20th. We'll be doing start to finish,
That'll
which
be
is
like a more official album release show.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because that'll be like with Joni and Kim doing their fun making stuff, and
Hmm.
like it'll be the full like the Lakes experience. Whereas the other thing was just like we're like sitting down and just being like, thanks, give us money,
Yeah. Please donate to us.
donate to the True Kellum Art Recovery Fund.
um, yeah, kind of segueing from that a little bit away from the album.
Yeah.
I almost missed this when I was just reading, like listening to the music and looking at everything
Oh yeah.
with the Patreon. Um,
Oh yeah.
just because I haven't talked to a lot of bands that, if any bands that have been doing any sort of Patreon stuff, because I know that's like been happening a little bit more on like there's some
Yeah.
national like bands that are known nationally that have been doing that and like
Yeah.
doing like demos, and it's not a fully new thing, but I haven't gotten a chance to talk to anybody that's done it as extensively, it seems like, as you and or the band has, because it's
Yeah. It's
there's
pretty
like
much
three
all.
tiers. Yeah. That would
Yeah.
make it the most streamlined, I would imagine. But with like given that there's three different tiers and you've been posting at least somewhat actively for almost like a year,
Yeah.
how have you kept up on that and just engaging with all three levels? Because that just, I feel like, creates more work. If it's just like one tier, it's like you're opting in, you're getting everything, instead of like, okay, where do I differentiate? Like, this is like the $3, this is the $9, this is the $20.
Yeah.
And was that something that started just out of kind of a restlessness during COVID, and you wanted to continue to be creative while the album was coming together? Just talk a little bit about your experience with that and keeping it going this entire time.
Oh yeah, I love Patreon. I haven't been able to post too much the last 2 weeks because I just total like brief personal side tangent got into a car crash. I was
Yeah.
telling, I think it was, yeah, the whole car crash COVID scare moving thing all happened
Yeah,
in like
in like
this
a
like,
week.
2
Yeah.
days. Yeah. And so it was just like, oh man, I need to like take a break. I still have to like set up a desk and like my recording stuff for that and everything. So I feel bad I haven't been able to do a lot of the stuff that I've been usually doing on Patreon. But what I do is I would have every other week I'd switch between two different videos. One would be like an instrument tutorial of like, hey, this is like a way to spruce up a guitar part a little bit. Because even like when I was first writing this stuff, it was a lot of just like bar chords and like root position chords. And I was thinking like, well, I mean, like if everyone else has like a full out part, I should probably also try doing that with the guitar. It's like, think
Reach
about it
the
like
same
this.
level.
Yeah, here's this chord. What if you like did this instead? Or you're like, here's this bass bar. You can like learn it. I'd like throw the tabs and sheet music at people. But then the other thing that I think was really fun is I'd do like a deep dive into each song. So I had all the files in Logic Pro, and so I would just kind of go track by track and kind of show like how they interact with each other, either like
How, like
rhythmically
they
or
flow into each other and everything.
yeah. And so that's always really fun. I'm getting to the point where I only have a couple left, and I have to like I have to get a few more things recorded once I get this stuff
Everything
set
set
up.
up, yeah.
Yeah, once I have time for that. God. But you know how IKEA goes, and you gotta
Oh, yeah.
set stuff up. Yeah.
It takes like 3 to 4 hours when it should only take like 1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. They're like, this should only take you 15 minutes. You know, like I'm spending that much time reading the directions.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. But yeah, so that right. I also do a lot of playlists because I've been doing a lot of just like digital crate digging since you haven't really been able to go into too many record stores lately. So just been like trying to
That
find
is categorically false. I work at a record store. You can come into all of them.
Oh my god, wait, which one are you at?
Down in the valley, in Golden Valley.
Oh, you're in the down in the I used to go there all the time because I used to do music lessons at my music store.
Oh, yeah, that tragically closed fairly recently, I believe.
No, I don't know. It's like Jim died.
Oh, I didn't know that he passed away. I just knew that it had like shut down just before I started working there. But record stores are open. People did not realize it sometimes. So I need a soapbox there for a minute.
Yeah, because I've stopped in a few times and stuff like that. Like that because like yeah, I've definitely been going into clarification. I've definitely been going into record stores more. Yeah, because like God, like
didn't mean to give you a little shit there, but I just thought that was funny.
Yeah. Oh no, like people need to know to go to these stores because like talk about people being impacted so severely from the pandemic. God. So yeah, like, but I think I've stopped in there a few times in the last year, and I feel like I recognize seeing you in there actually.
Maybe. With masks and everything, and now they're back again, so who knows? But
like the only thing you can see.
You just see like some glasses and just disappointed eyes. Like, why are you asking me this?
Yeah.
Not to get too sidetracked there.
Oh yeah, what was I saying?
You're talking about you were just doing a lot of playlist creation for the Patreon.
Just like finding weird, obscure stuff and just being like, hey, like give this some spins, everyone. Like I found like this awesome like do you know the artist Laurie Anderson?
Yeah, like the kind of I don't really know, like experimental composer has like Superman, I think is like her Big Superman, Science is like her album from like the 80s.
Yeah, it's she's such an iconic artist, but like she does like a lot of like, you know, electronic production music, speaking, but like her instrument is like 100% just her speaking voice.
Yeah.
And I found something that was like really similar to that because I went through a huge Laurie Anderson phase, but like she there's this like Greek artist, I can't even remember her name, like Lena Petrovolchik or something. Like I don't know. But she has like the equivalent of like a Laurie Anderson tune, but it's like super Greek, and it's just like it's awesome. Just like and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of playlists and showing people how to like do different things and posting like behind the scenes like record or like videos
as you're working on the album and everything.
Yeah, but Patreon's great, and I think more local bands should do it because I mean there's so many friends and family members who want to support you and can afford to do like, you know, $3 a month or like up to like a couple people doing like 20, you know, and like it helps. It really helps. Like that's band fund. Yeah.
And it's a little less. I mean, there's pressure to keep on it, but there's like less. There isn't just like I'm buying a tape, I am buying a shirt, where it's just like it's great, but it's very transactional. It's like I'm paying you, so I receive a object in return.
Well, right. Yeah, exactly. And like we have an option for like the higher up tier to like write a song with us, and like of course it's busy, so I know people don't always have time for that. But if it's out there to be like, all right, I will help you through the songwriting process, and we'll like do a song together.
Collab,
you know? Yeah, and I think that's like super cool to be like participating with the artists. Like I've reached out to a couple artists who I follow on Patreon, just like straight up and like, what's the chord progression for this song? Like, you know, it's awesome. Like it's so much more interactive. I don't know.
So with the album having been out for a little while and the release show planned for about I think exactly a week from today. What else does the ensemble and the band have planned for the future? Just I mean, no, you've been personally busy the last few weeks, but with the release show kind of being the culmination, hopefully, of the album release and that process, what else have you had in mind? Since maybe everybody else has had different thoughts or plans, but it is kind of the quote unquote mastermind of the band.
Yeah.
What have you been hoping to? What have you been working on, if anything? What are you hoping to work on next?
Yeah, I mean, we got to record a single for our second album that we're gonna probably release in about a year, which
Oh
is
wow,
stop. I know, yeah,
yeah, nonstop.
yeah, I know. So I gotta get this stuff set up so I can keep recording that because I would like to do it like roughly a year from now or maybe a little bit later. I don't know, but
Well, you'll see where it lands. Yeah.
Album recorded. Yeah, we got about half an album recorded. We got more free studio time from another different thing. Matt Holmes, who works at Wild Sound, asked to use us for some of his students that he teaches, and is like, yeah, I'll throw like a free song down for you. Just like get the like students to like work on recording a band, and so we got to do that. That was super fun.
Yeah.
We're about halfway through an album recording some stuff, and otherwise, yeah, I mean, we're just definitely like starting here and like pushing it as far as it will go because that's all we want to do.
Yeah. And there's still so much uncertainty going forward, and like it's hard to have everything like broken down, like have an exact bit by bit plan.
Yeah.
But yeah, just taking it as it comes, it sounds like, and doing whatever you can.
Exactly. Otherwise, it's really nice because each of the band members all has their separate things. Like Graydon every Tuesday night has a really awesome jam over at Whitey's Saloon in Northeast, and like Joni, me, and Willow from We Are the Willows are doing a jazz set at what's the speakeasy? Volstead's Emporium. So that'll be fun. Ben's doing a lot of performance stuff. Elizabeth and I occasionally like work on a couple like mini like vignettes of shows and things like that together. And Patrick, I don't know what he's doing out in Chicago,
but doing a ton of stuff. I'm imagining, yeah,
doing Patrick stuff.
Cool. So yeah, that mostly wraps up questions about the album and the band and everything. But since you have a lot of very unique connections, it sounds like, with musicians here in the cities versus just like DIY bands, punk bands. Branching out a little bit beyond that, what are some like either artists or like albums that you have been listening to or enjoying lately from local people you maybe just want to shout out and draw some attention to, maybe get some new ears to check them out?
Yeah. I mean, some of these are a little bit less recent than others, but like
whatever you want to recommend. Yeah.
I heard the new song from like We Are the Willows yesterday on the Current, and was like, oh god, that is like such a beautiful whacked out tune. That's a great one.
From them, or like the collab album they just put out?
Yeah. It's like or from sorry, that's not how to answer that. I think it's from them. Like I think it's
one of their, because they put out an album, and then like I think one of them just put out like the collab album like last week or something.
Yeah, I actually don't know. I should ask them.
Yeah.
That's one that I just heard recently. Bathtub Sig has a great like mini single that was recorded like back in like quarantine that is just like super haunting and beautiful. Hillary is such an amazing musician. But also like the Controversial Skinny Pill is probably my favorite local band, just because like Skylar's such a beloved nut and has just like the greatest just like grooves. I just love it so much. So I'm ready for more of that.
Yeah, I have not checked out the new that We Are the Willows collab thing, so that's a good reminder to check that out.
Yeah, I know. I need to like actually help them dig into that for sure. Otherwise, also my roommate Alina Myra has released some stuff recently that's just like freaking amazing.
Oh yeah. I remember her. I think EP or On the Table, the 3-song EP.
So good.
Yeah, I remember that. It's been a long time since I remember that. Yeah.
And I think her voice just like fits. She's like listening to me say this right now, but like her voice fits so well in so many settings, because like when she's doing more live stuff, it's so like rock driven, but then like some of the recordings have this like amazing production value to it, and it just like blends so well. I don't know, she's one of my favorites. So
does she have like a gun pointed at you right now? It's like, say nice things.
It's like, say it again, repeat that. Say it louder so everyone hears. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check out all of those artists or releases if you haven't yet. To those who are listening. Cool. So the Lakes album Unforgettable Cheer was released in June. It's available pretty much everywhere. Bandcamp, streaming.
We got some CDs to make up for people, so that's good.
Yeah. Check out some physical media. We love that. Social media is just DeLakes, or what's the best way to keep track of the band?
Yeah, Drew DeLakes is usually what it is on like Twitter and Instagram. I try not to do Facebook too much, so I think that page is pretty archaic. But
yeah. I don't think anybody listening is like, let me find them on Facebook.
Yeah, I should look this up on Facebook. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you so much for chatting. Congrats on the album. Check out the album release show if you're free next Friday. Sounds like it's going to be a very creatively fulfilling time for you guys, and hopefully very good show back for anyone who is just kind of getting back into shows again now that they're happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having us, Wes.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Ear Coffee. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.